What's good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the You're Wrong Sir podcast. I'm so excited. This episode is extremely long overdue. A great friend of mine, and just somebody who is legit an inspiration to me. So her name is Madison Lee. She's a certified MBA agent, a graduate of Temple University, founder of Elevate X, co-founder, and then now the head of event management and sponsorships with Grady Sports Agency. So how you feeling?
Oh my gosh, and I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me. Like you said, it is long overdue. We should have been had this conversation.
Yes.
But I'm really excited to be here now. So yeah.
You've been ducking, that's why. It's okay.
I know. I've been nervous. I see all the other episodes come out. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm nervous.
So just to give everybody just background, right? So me and Madison met, said great friend of mine. But what was it? Summer of 2020? Yeah, summer of 2020.
Yeah, COVID.
Literally, COVID. I didn't have anything to do. I was at home, and somebody sent me over this flyer, and it was Joshua's Agent Academy, first one ever. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna take it. I thought I wanted to be an agent, so I signed up. And in my cohort and in my class was Madison. And I just remember you. I remember you not even making a lot of the classes because you were so busy. But we had a group project, and Madison was in my group along with two other guys. And I just remember you just taking initiative and being like, okay, y'all, here's the presentation. Here's the template. We got to do this. We got to do that. And our presentation was great too. But I just remember that moment, from then on, I was like, oh, she's talented. And I think it's just for you, it's easy for your aura to come off as a leader, a person who's serious but intelligent. And then ever since then, I've just been the biggest Madison fan, so always vouching for her. So I'm happy we work together now.
Oh my gosh, I'm literally the biggest Anaya fan. So
oh my god,
the same story, just everything Anaya said. I really wasn't in
whatever
classes, but we had so much fun just finalizing the project and working together. So
yes, that was a really good experience. And then moving forward, talked about I had the opportunity to join working with Joshua, before Madison did, and now we're working together now. But I really want to start off because I said a lot of titles in the beginning, and I said how we met and how I know you. But for me, of course you want all of this to mean something. So my first question to you is, when it's all said and done, and you can't have it totally figured out now, but what's your intention? Or when you're dreaming and you're imagining what will make you happy at this point in your life, when it's all said and done, what is your perception of success for you?
That's such a hard question, and I've honestly toyed with that question for so long, especially now. I'm in such a transitional phase in my life, just graduating grad school. It's what are you doing? But I think success for me really just has to do with the impact that I leave for others and other young women within the space. Growing up, there wasn't a lot of women that you could look up to. There's those 3-5 that you okay, yeah, this is who I want to be.
Right.
For me, I didn't see anybody that I was oh my gosh, this is who I want to be as a person. A lot of people are very good at a lot of things, and there's this saying about a jack of all trades but a master of none. But for me, I think that being a jack of all trades is where I think I shine, and I don't want people to feel like they have to be siloed in this one space, or even just in sport, or even just in entertainment, just being an agent. It doesn't have to be like that, and being multifaceted across a number of industries and with a number of different people, I think is really big for me. So I just want to be able to inspire the next generation to know that they don't have to be siloed into one space, and to just see other young women in the number of spaces that I'm in.
That's good, because I remember we had a conversation just a while ago. I think maybe we were in Miami, and he was like, yeah, I'm a jack of all trades but a master of none. And I feel like you had a completely different perspective back then than you did about it. Then it was girl, I don't know exactly what I want to specialize in and what I want to do. And now it seems like you're comfortable and okay with that. Where does that comfortability come from? Being unsure and uncertain of that, and now you're it's okay, I'm not boxed in.
Yeah, I think that's just what it has to do with. It's about not being boxed in. I had the opportunity, literally was just telling Anaya yesterday, to interview with Apple. And when you think about that, it's you're not able to do that if you're not doing something else, right? So if I'm just focused on sport, my access to Apple isn't the same as if I also work for Microsoft. So if I'm working for Microsoft, now I have access in tech to a totally different space, a totally different group of people where I can still do what I'm passionate about, but focus it on in the tech space. So I think there's just little moments that clicked for me, where it's like, it's okay that you're not going on one road all the time.
Yeah.
There's different paths, and there's different little avenues that you may take, but they're all connected to that one road. So I think that's I just had that a moment just clicked for me. Like
That's good though, because that leads into my next question perfectly. So we talked about like the different titles, the different roles. You talked about, okay, I'm in sports, but without this experience with Microsoft, I wouldn't have had to talk to Apple. What role, for all the different roles we could talk, we're going to dive into it more, but like, okay, Elevate X, GSA, all these different things. What role do you feel like they've played in the bigger picture for you? Or like, I don't know, what position do you feel like each role has contributed to you?
Yeah, no, I get that. And a lot of people, when I was an undergrad at Temple, a lot of people are like, okay, what's your major? I was always sport and rec management with a concentration in event leadership, minor in legal studies. Everything for me is super calculated. I'm not going to do anything without like the idea that there can be something else down the line. I think that sport and tech have a lot of similarities in the way that Black women are perceived in those industries. So no matter how I am interacting in those industries, I know at the end of the day, it's always going to impact my bigger goal, which is to impact young Black women in different spaces so that they feel inspired to achieve whatever goals that they want to achieve. So for me, every single position that I've had, whether it was starting as a ball girl for the Phillies or working at like Radio 1 Philadelphia, like how does that work? How does that come together? Every single thing that like you do, you pull and pick from like the goals that you have for your life. And those should all align in my eyes. They do. They all align to a bigger picture. So everything that I do has been pretty calculated. Although things have like been sprung on me, it's like, oh, like what is this supposed to be? I just trust that God is placing it in my lap for a reason, and He knows my goals better than I do, and knows what I want to do better than me. So
that's
I think
facts.
everything is like pretty calculated, but all because of God. So
that's good. And just talking about like calculation, you ultimately made the decision, I want to go to Philly, I want to go to Temple. Coming from Connecticut, going there, like why Temple, first of all? Why Temple and why this major?
Yeah, so I originally wanted to go into pharmaceutical sales. I wanted
really?
to yeah, and then
what?
into pharmaceutical sales. I had a love for like chemistry, biochemistry.
Get out.
Yeah, it's so weird. I couldn't even imagine doing that now. Like it's like, oh my gosh, no. But yeah, I had a passion for it. Went to pharmacy, like a pharmacy camp, like a week-long thing, and I was like, yeah, I hate this. Like, I can't imagine going to college doing this. So I started like looking at different majors. Was inspired by what was going on in the sport industry at the time. You saw like the influx in marketing deals about like 5-6 years ago, like how people started actually branding themselves. It's much more calculated. It was starting to become much more calculated and much more strategic. And I had a conversation with my dad one day, and he was like, why don't you study sport? Like, become an agent. I was like, I don't know if I can do that. He's just like, you like sports, you enjoy being around this space, and like there's money to be made, so do it. So yeah, I looked at some schools. Top schools at the time were UMass, University of Florida, and Temple. UMass was too close to home. University of Florida was a little bit far, but I still applied because I was like, I want to go far away. University of Florida was actually the first school that I got into, and I was like, oh, yep, I'm going there.
So I think that just relates back to, because like I was trying to figure out how to balance. Like that was my initial thing. I was looking up top business schools. Indiana came up, U of I. Like I was hell bent on those things. And then when I got here, I feel like it was important to take advantage of the opportunity. And in 4 years, and you really don't understand the importance of networking, like until probably I would say like you get a little further and then you start seeing the impact. But I know that we can relate in terms of like having to balance a lot at one time, socially and with school. Talk to me about like that balance. And is there a balance? Like, is there a such thing as balance to you? Do you integrate it? What is it?
That's a good one. Balance is hard. I think that it doesn't exist. There's more of like, there's never going to be balance in your life. There's never going to be 6 eggs in one basket, 6 in the other. You weigh them, they're equal. There's never going to be that in life. So I think it's just about more like prioritizing what is important in this moment. And I think a lot of people are trying to find balance when in reality, it's like all about prioritizing when it is most important to do XYZ.
That's good.
So yeah, there's not a lot of balance in life, I don't think. And honestly, I don't think there should be, right? Like, I know that there's like this whole thing about like peace, harmony, balance. It's important to like your inner, your mental, etc. But like at the end of the day, it all comes down to prioritizing and making sure that what's important to you is what you're focused on. And I think that's where people oftentimes feel that they're like not in balance or like misaligned. It's because like you're not prioritizing the things that are important to you.
In college, did you feel like you needed a sense of balance?
I thought I did, but then I realized like I'm doing 1,000,001 things, but everything I'm doing I love. So like it didn't even matter. It was like, it doesn't matter if I'm going out with my friends and partying until 4 a.m. and then having to go to the station at 5 a.m. and getting out. And I know I'm gonna have a great time when I'm going down to the Roots picnic and having fun, and then I'll be there all day. And then I had to come home and do homework, but like I love what I study, so like it doesn't matter. It may suck, but like I know I love what I study, and I know that whatever I'm doing right now is getting me to the bigger picture. So I think, yeah,
that's good. And because I know a lot of people have different effects on like their college experience, and sometimes doing so much at one time, you just set out a whole schedule, partying 1 hour, I got to go to the station, I got to do this, I got to do that. How has balancing or having so much on your plate positively and or negatively impacted the habits that you have now?
Oh, that is a great question. And I ask myself that literally every day, because sometimes you get into the habit of doing things and being so busy that you don't know what it's like to not be busy. And I went through that just graduating grad school, where now I'm not allocating 10 to 12 hours of my week to school now. So now this 10 to 12 hours, like, what am I going to do? And you're like, okay, do I surround myself and do more work? Do I hang out with my friends? Do I do this? But like, again, like I said, it all comes down to prioritizing, figuring out what's most important to you. But like I've created like some piss poor habits, sleeping, eating, like those types of things, just because I'm not focused on myself, like my physical being, but more focused on like, okay, who is Madison in 5 years? Who is Madison in 10 years?
Right.
And I think that's been tough, like to stay in the now and say like, wow, like you're not where you should be presently. Like you're thinking about the future too much, or you're thinking about what's next. When if you live in the present here, you're gonna see that, oh, you you didn't eat all day, or
that's real.
Yeah, like you haven't drank any water today, like something as simple as that, or like you haven't taken a shower today, like you're working from home, and it's like, okay, you're doing things like on this cyclical trend. It's like, oh my gosh, like gotta get it together. I think routine is important to that, but it's hard to have a routine when everything
that's real too, because I mean I feel like you've done 10 times more, but even for me, like sophomore and junior year, I had seen myself like go throughout the day and I'm like, dang, I don't eat. But like if I was in high school, I'd be starving all day. Like I don't know how I could go without a meal. And then now, like I even do this sometimes now. I feel like we're just like, somebody texts you like, hey, can you meet for this time? And I'm like, yeah. And like even in our planner, your day doesn't like list out, oh, you need to eat, oh, you need to do this, oh, you just see like, hey, this is a time block that's open to talk to somebody. And sometimes it's so hard to like be like, okay, wait, 12 o'clock to 1, I need to eat.
Gotta eat.
Yeah. That's real. That's so real. And I think a lot of college students can relate to that, and just people who have a like mind like us, thinking, always trying to think forward thinking, and sometimes not being conscious of being where your feet are. That's really good.
Yeah. No, okay. You always say that, be where your feet are. And I think like that's so true. Like sometimes you just have to like be here. And here is good. Like sometimes people don't appreciate here.
Yes. And I've been like enjoying my peace more. So like, cause I'll be always so talking to everybody. I'm like, bro, I don't want to be bothered. At a certain time, I text him back like I'm not doing anything. And that's so crazy. And okay, so I'm reading a book now, right? Will Smith's book. And I feel like great just mindset that relates to both of us, but he has some like gems in the book. And when I was trying to think about like, where do I want to take this conversation with Madison, one of my favorite quotes in the book so far, I think like depicts me, but it also just paints you too as a person, right? Okay, so something that he said was, something bad happens to us and we decide we're never going to let that happen again. But in order to prevent it, we have to be a certain way. We choose the behaviors that we believe deliver safety, stability, and love. and we repeat them over and over again. In the movies, we call it a character. In real life, we call it personality. How we respond to our fears, that is the person we become. And I was like, whoa. But this is a great question for me, simply because like when I think of Madison, right? Great things. I think of assertive. I think of a great leader. I think of being efficient. I think of having like an entrepreneurial mindset. And so when he talks about this, like that's the person we become. Where does this stem from for you? Like, where does being assertive, being efficient, being on top of it, knowing like I want to be my own boss initially or eventually, where does that stem from? Is that parents? Is that something you've experienced that you didn't like and you were determined that you would change it? Like, who is Madison and where does it come from?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. Love that Smith quote. I think for me, like I'm an only child, just like you. So
yeah, it's terrible.
It is, but our parents shower us with like attention, and there's this concept of like of the only child, like there's stigma of only children of how it can be. And I think my parents, although they showered me with those things, they let me know that like you're not like the best all the time. Like you are not always like, it's not always Madison's world. And I think like a lot of times parents and good parents shower their children with a lot of love, a lot of affection, but don't give them the tough love that they need all the time. And I think that that's like somewhere where it started, like no matter what, no matter where I am, I'm always gonna have to work for what I want. But when I get there, I have to know that this is what I want, because when I get there, like there's no room for error. There's no room for me to fail. So I think that it's allowed me from the beginning, like even when I was a kid, my parents said, oh, I want to do dance. I went to dance class for a couple of weeks. I hated it. I said, I want to quit. No, there's a concert. you got the partner recital, so you need to get it together. And I think it was like 5-6 years old, and you're like, okay, like you don't think about it like until you're in situations like this where you're having a conversation about it, and you're like, oh my God, like that moment was so important, because had my parents said, okay, yeah, you can quit, I'd probably been a quitter my entire life. Not my entire life, but my entire childhood would have been a quitter.
Yeah.
So it's moments like that where I realized if I say I want it, I have to genuinely want it, because when I get there, there's no room for error. There's no room to fail. There's no room for me to feel unsuccessful. That doesn't necessarily have to do with what anybody else deems successful or a failure. But for me, whatever the want is, the goal is, I need to make sure that I'm going to be successful at it.
Ooh, okay, I like that. Ooh, okay. And then, right, so you didn't quit. You went throughout your major, you got your degree, you got your bachelor's, whatever. And the first thing that you did during COVID was you got together with some friends and you decided that you were going to co-found a company. To me, like that's the epitome of what we just talked about, like knowing it's whatever. Like even, sometimes I think with a college degree, people think you're warranted a full-time position. And then when you get to that point, it's like, hey, I did all of this and there's no guarantee. And so with COVID, like with so much uncertainty, what was like the mindset behind starting Elevate, and why did you do that over choosing a 9-to-5?
Sure. So when COVID hit, couldn't get a job. I was everywhere, everywhere. I was at my senior internship, which was full-time. I was at Wasserman. So I was looking at a few other agencies. I was looking at just a few other teams within the NFL, NBA, seeing where I could get my feet in the sport world.
Right.
I was having interviews. April, May swings around and they're like, yeah, we're in a hiring freeze. So all the interviews stop. And these are like, at this point, you're in like last rounds of interviews because they know you're about to graduate.
Yeah.
They're looking to hire you. So yeah, it was really tough. And when I started getting those calls, we're on hiring freeze, we're on hiring freeze, we're on hiring freeze, I had a conversation with someone and they were like, just start a business. And I was like, I mean, that sounds so easy, but like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So I sat down you're not doing anything. School's done. I was on an internship that got shut down. So I was doing nothing all day. So I was doing was thinking. I was just thinking about like, what am I going to do? How am I going to be successful? Like, what is next? And then I thought about the idea of starting a business. I always wanted to do it, but like I said, I'm very calculated in like my approach to things. Why would I start a business when I have no experience in business, when I have no 9-to-5 experience? It didn't make sense to me. Like, that's not my nature to like do something where you're not prepared for.
Yeah.
But I think, like a lot of people say, there's no way to be prepared to start a business. So I said, okay, let's do it. So I got Gabby and Josh together. We went to Temple together. So we just came together and started the business. I think I really was the one who kind of brought the idea to the table. But I knew I couldn't do it alone, and I knew that they had other experience that would be of value to contribute to whatever we were going to do. And initially, and as you know, Elevate has kind of disbanded. Yeah. But the goal of Elevate was achieved. A lot of people think that, oh, it's a failed business. No, the goal of Elevate was achieved. The goal of Elevate was to be a stepping stone to our next careers, was to be a stepping stone to whatever we were going to achieve next. It was never supposed to be something that was going to last forever. Had it last forever, we would have been very grateful. But the goal of Elevate was for us to gain tangible, hands-on experience, starting a business for one, and then meeting with brands, having conversations with brands in a way that would allow us to, now Gabby work for Saks. Now Josh start his own media company, have Rhode Island client. For me, go to Microsoft and figure out, okay, like this is somewhere where I can leverage experience to go elsewhere or do something next. So that's good. Elevate was achieved, but a lot of people don't know that.
No, that's a good point too, because I think a lot of people from the outside in, it's like, oh, it failed. But I think a lot of people never know what our intention was when we started something, and I think that's like something that people have to learn. But just for me too, like I commend you, because I don't know about you, but for me, like when I have ideas, I really hold them tight. And I'm very careful about who I tell, and I could trust you the utmost. And I'm like, I don't know, I want to keep this to myself. Like, how did you feel comfortable to have this idea? Even though you had a good relationship with them and they're reliable and they would do work, you can still have doubts because it's yours. How did you feel comfortable to open it up so it can come from like yours to ours?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think for me, it just came down to the point that like I knew I couldn't do it alone. And who are the people that I trust the most right now? Who are the people that I know have the experience that they're not going to be offended if it doesn't work out. They're not going to be hurt if like this is just a temporary thing, but they also know that like they know the goal, they know the vision. I think that that's the best way to put it. It's hard to give people, your full self and your full anything, ideas, self. It's very hard, but I think it really just comes down to, the trust, honestly. Yeah. Trust.
Ooh. Okay. And let's talk about trust. So people, who were deciding to partner with Elevate, I mean, there were athletes, different influencers, etc. One, you guys, like for me, how did you trust yourself? Because you never ran a business before, but you guys were negotiating on behalf of people, influencers, and like in your hands, this is the amount of money I'm getting for a check. How did you like build the confidence, to negotiate, but also like build the confidence to give advice to these influencers to like know their worth? Like you're worth this much and this is the fee you should charge.
Yeah. I think it honestly came down to transparency. Like I think a lot of people take transparency for granted because a lot of people in the sport world specifically are feeding you a dream. Agents feed you a dream, brands feed you a dream, teams feed you dreams. So the whole idea for us was the only way that you're going to be able to trust us is if we're transparent from the beginning. So I'm not going to try to feed you this long story about who we are and like what we are going to be. I'm going to tell you who we are right now. You can get on board or get lost. And that's like really how we navigated. There's a lot of people that said no and then came back 3-6 months later wanting to work and like, oh no, we're too busy. We're too busy.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good, okay, let's touch on that. So, because I feel like I experienced this a lot with like my podcast too. Like there are people who was like, no, left me on red or whatever. And then there's people who like, hey, yeah, I love it. I'm okay. How do you know? Cause I think sometimes like in the industry and like me, you, Joshua and Rodney have this conversation all the time, even with athletes, like knowing when you should be like, okay, let me be cordial, have the relationship, or like, I'm okay. I have respect for you, but I don't want to be involved in business with you anymore.
Yeah.
As especially as a person like coming in new, where people say you don't have a lot of credibility and you're trying your best to get as much as possible. How do you know when like to find the balance between like, no, I'm okay, or no, like, let's try it again?
I think that's a hard question. And like, honestly, it comes down to like you and your gut. That's I always think intuition. You know if somebody's actually rocking with you, or if somebody's just like, okay, now they're up, so let me hop on the bandwagon.
Yep.
I think there's people who consistently show like, I'm supporting you. We may not have been able to work together right now, but like, I'm still supporting you. I'm still commenting. I'm still sharing. I'm still, checking to make sure you're good. But like, there's other people who are, they just see you come up and they had conversations 6 months ago and now you're up and it's a different story.
Yeah.
So I think there's a fine line, but honestly, I think it really just comes down to your gut. Like, and do you really want to work with somebody who did you like that? Who's
right
to turn around and work with somebody else because they're doing XYZ. And obviously I think experience has a lot of things to do with a lot. I'm not gonna like doubt that. But I also do think it's important to remember that like, just because they were where you were months ago or years ago, like they were exactly in the same boat. So I don't know. I think that like, if people trust you, you're transparent from the beginning, and they rock with you, they rock with you. If they don't, they don't. And yeah, I mean, maybe we can touch base down the line, but the prices won't be the same. The price won't be the same in the time. Period. That's just it. But yeah, no, I think it just comes down to the gut feeling.
Okay. And then with Elevate, and just even now, like I feel like since I've met you, you've done a lot of what we call pivoting. Like Elevate, disbanded, pivoted to the 9-to-5, pivoted to, Microsoft, now pivoting to GSA, and now possibly wanting to pivot somewhere else and having different conversations. For people who may be afraid, when do you know is the right time to pivot?
That's a hard one. Somebody told me when I was working in radio, I was like my sophomore year of college. They said you shouldn't always be looking for your next move, but you should always have your next move in mind. And I think that it just comes like, you know when you wake up unhappy, when you're not as passionate as you used to be. You're not always going to be as passionate all the time, but there comes a time when you're like, I just can't do this anymore. Like, it comes a time when your emotions start to take over you when you're doing a particular job or you're doing a particular task. And I think when that moment happens, it's like, all right, let's figure out what's next. It may not really be like, oh, let's change companies completely, but like maybe it's okay, let me step back from brand partnerships and let me just focus on events. Or let me step back from, taking these types of classes and let me try to take these ones next semester. I think that's what it comes down to. Like, it's just, really a gut feeling, but also just like, like you just know. But
just trust yourself.
Just trust yourself. I think a lot of people don't trust the feelings that they feel.
Ooh.
Like it's the same. Literally, I don't do like a whole relationship thing, but it's literally like in relationships, butterflies aren't always good. Like, when the butterflies are good butterflies and when they're not. And I think a lot of people don't always understand feelings and emotions within themselves because they don't know themselves.
Ooh, that's real. And speaking of advice, let's finish it off with something really good. So I'm sure, listening, there are going to be women listening, there are going to be men listening, but something we have in common is like, we're both women, and Black women at that. People always ask the question of like, what advice would you give? But I don't want to ask that. I want to ask, what advice would you give to a younger Black girl that's unpopular, that a lot of people may not be willing to admit, or they might agree within their mind, but people usually don't say out loud that like, it's true, and maybe you wish you would have heard.
So they're not popular.
Yeah. So it could be like something, I don't know, something that's not popular, like something that we don't hear a lot of people say, or a lot of people aren't willing to admit. Yeah.
I was gonna say the cliche, like so much cliche. There's so many like cliche things I can say. Gosh, I think I would say say no more, and oh God. Oh my God, this is such a hard question. Like, I think like something that I wish I knew when I was like younger was that like no matter what, like life goes on, and like everybody's not gonna like you, everybody's not gonna be your friend, everybody's not gonna care about what you have going on. And the biggest advocate for you is you. So like make sure that you know who you are, that you're true to yourself, and that what other people say to you shouldn't impact the way you feel about yourself, good or bad.
Okay, I got a quick follow-up for that, right? I think something that like I've been relating to a lot is like everybody's not gonna like you, but also you're not gonna like everybody. And that's okay too. Like this may be somebody's favorite person within the industry, and you can be like, I can't stand this person, or whatever it is, or you just feel like they aren't as genuine as everybody perceives them to be. And the sports industry is so small too, right? And everybody like knows each other. So for people, for a girl who may not like an individual or may not feel like that person is the best for her, what do you have to say?
Don't fake it. I say don't fake it. I think like people can sense when like you don't like somebody or you don't like something. So don't fake it. Don't force it. No matter where they are in the industry, don't force it. There's somebody else out there doing what you want to do who will actually like you. So don't try to force a relationship with somebody that is just up. Is up. Yeah. Is up. If that's not the person that matches your values and your goals.
Ooh, y'all heard it here on the You're Wrong Sir podcast. Madison, where can everybody find you?
Oh, Instagram and TikTok. We're getting that TikTok following up. It's Maddie Lee, 4 E's after Maddie and 4 E's after Lee.
Okay, thank you, Madison. I really appreciate you for hopping on. For everybody listening, don't forget to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts, wherever we're streaming. But we appreciate you for hopping on. I hope this was extremely fruitful for everybody listening. We out.